Today we're talking Last Shot by Daniel José Older, and stay tuned to hear some of your questions get answered by the author. The Star Wars Show Book Club is a series where we gather friends and fans to read Star Wars books, examining how they relate to all of the Star Wars films, live-action shows, animated series, comics, and games. Through these stories, we enrich our understanding of the galaxies far, far away. Kristin Baver here, putting together a book club crew to join up with our favorite scoundrels, Lando Calrissian and Han Solo. Our story traces 4 different storylines and crisscrosses time and space, from the era before Solo a Star Wars story to a few years after the Rebel victory in the Battle of Endor in Star Wars Return of the Jedi. That means we get to follow a young Lando Calrissian in L337, Han Solo and Chewbacca in their smuggling prime, and see the reunited rogues at the dawn of the New Republic. Each time, they're in search of a mysterious transmitter of untold power. As the unique adventure unfolds, killer droids test Han and Lando's mettle and their friendship. Plus, we meet an Ewok slicer, an orphan of Alderaan, and a creepy Powin doctor called Fyzen Gor, who creates a cult that truly believes organic parts should help restore damaged droids, not the other way around. Yeah, we're looking at you, Grievous. Now let's meet our book club crew. Joining us today, we have Lillian, Publicity Coordinator Extraordinaire for Lucasfilm. Hi, Lillian.
Hi, thanks for having me.
We've also got Brett, a senior editor with Lucasfilm Publishing, who up until the age of 7 thought Star Trek was superior, mostly because Star Wars hadn't premiered yet.
That is true. Hello, everybody.
And our friend and delightfully twisted history buff, Holly, a writer, producer, and host for podcasts including Full of Sith, Stuff You Missed in History Class, and Criminalia.
Indeed, indeed. Hello, I'm so delighted to be here.
First up, probably the hardest question. Kasha, Taka, Peekpa, and Florks. Who do you most want on your crew?
Peekpa.
Why?
Adorable, adorable, bite-sized, super skilled. I want all of that.
I'd have to say Taka. I don't know, they pretty much like space metal. I can totally get behind the music they listen to.
I would have to agree with Peepka because she's unassuming and you wouldn't see her coming, so she'd be the perfect person to have on your team.
Those are all fine answers, although I love Florks. So I would actually go with Florks, and if I could cheat, I would pick Florks and Peekpa, because Peekpa is the MVP in a lot of ways, but I love that Florks just will run into a situation and be like, all right, I don't know, I got 3 thermal detonators, let's just see what happens. Got no chill. I kind of appreciate that.
If you had the 2 of them, you kind of get a great balance, because Peekpa is super thoughtful and methodical, and then you have, exactly, I'm just going to run in with all the detonators I can find. And between the 2 of them, you've got like a perfect team.
Can I have BX on my team instead? I really need caffeine.
Yeah. Beloved calf droid / droid who almost actually kind of saved the whole galaxy a whole lot of trouble later, but couldn't possibly know it. Almost, so close. Spoilers, but we'll get into that. So with Last Shot, I was really surprised that the book kind of crosses a lot of different genres. It's a body horror story in some places, it's a heist, it's a love story when you really get down to those Han and Leia moments in the Lando and Kasha back and forth. And it digs into some pretty serious social issues as well. So I'm curious, for the crew we've assembled here, what was your favorite aspect or genre that was covered in Last Shot?
I guess I would say I like the buddy aspect of it. I really liked to see like Lando and Han just really playing off each other, and just having met Daniel and like the way he acts and the way he is like really comes across in his writing. It's really great. It's almost like he's like sparring with himself, like he's both Lando and Han.
Funny that you mentioned being able to hear Daniel's voice through it, because one of the things I noted in my copious notes that I was keeping while I was reading it through for book club was that knowing that Daniel has a background as an EMT, when he gets to some of those medical moments where he's talking about like slashing through sinew and muscle and getting to the bone and the carving it.
The first time when L3 and Lando came across, in the Musalon remnants, like just the smell, and I just felt like I was there, and I've never smelled a dead body, but good Lord knows I can now just through Daniel's prose. So you're right, it was just so intense.
Yeah, if you've ever left meat out too long, it's basically the same. It's all just decaying flesh.
Yeah.
Speaking of dead bodies, horror is not
That's
really...
a segue I love. Go ahead, Lillian.
Horror is not really a theme that I gravitate to in books and TV. It's something that I really stay away from. So it was really interesting coming into this book not knowing that there was a horror element. It shocked me a little bit, and I found myself trying to imagine how gore was piecing these parts together. I found myself drawn into it eerily enough. Like, I really am curious to see that even on screen one day. Like, how would you have a droid human crossbreed out in the world going about killing people and trying to join his inner circle of people? But I feel like the horror element was really what kept me engaged in this book.
I also loved all of the body horror, not for probably the reasons you think. There is such a sort of shades of Mary Shelley about this, where you see the Frankenstein story playing out, but in different iterations. And what I really love about it is that ultimately this story, and a lot of Star Wars, for me, like the most important part of Star Wars for me is watching people grapple with their identities. And this becomes such a visceral way to kind of dissect that, where some people are literally willing to give up body parts to become something else. Others are having body parts thrust upon them, and they are either integrating that or rebelling against it. And that's just a really interesting avenue into that discussion and that kind of analysis of what it is to like have self-actualization, what it is to view yourself in a certain way, and then have that change, and how just psychologically you synthesize that information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it really turns some things on its head that we know and love from Star Wars. You know, the whole idea of somebody getting all their limbs perhaps slashed off by a master who is fighting them on Mustafar, and then they end up with all these cybernetic implants. And I've always thought of it, as I think most people have, as, you know, organics getting help from mechanical droid parts, but here we have it flipped on its head, and now we have some droids who can, you know, limp along a little bit longer with some help from organic tissue to step away from the gross stuff.
No.
No, we'll get back to it. We'll always get back to it. But I love the way we also see that kinder, gentler Han and Leia, and they're trying to settle down. And, you know, I think one of the first chapters, you get like a baby foot right in Han's face. Did the story make you see Han and Leia or any of these other characters in maybe a slightly different light because of the way they were explored here?
I think with Han for sure, because we definitely got a moment to, like you said, kind of get inside his head, and like, he really was struggling with wanting to be a good dad and wanting to be a husband, but his own self got in the way. It's like, but I just can't seem to do it. I liked how you could see him slipping into the Han, like, you know, comfortable with a blaster, you know, not with a baby toy or a rattle or, you know, something like this little human. He's like, how am I supposed to be in charge of this human when I sometimes cannot be in charge of myself? And then also with Lando too, to see him also in a way like, oh, maybe I want to settle down. Maybe Cash is it. You know, this could be my girl for life. And neither one of them, and they're so business-like, the two of them, that they want to have time for each other. I don't know. It was that push and pull throughout the whole story.
I will say this for the record. Knowing that I am not really a big kids person, like kids make me a little nervous, Han with an infant was more terrifying than any of the body horror. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is very.
You're like, no, a baby foot. A baby foot
touched him. Oh, I'm scared.
Meanwhile, there's like a droid head with a Wookiee arm, and you're like,
that's no problem. That is no problem.
I love it.
Interesting.
Oh, I bet it's soft. I'd
Curious.
love to pet it. Different things that terrify different people, so fair. Yeah,
that's true. I do think that the Han and Leia moments in their home were really relatable to me, especially with 2020. Like, Han is trying to keep little Ben Solo asleep, and then Leia gets a work call from Mon Mothma, and it wakes them up. And then Han just goes out into the living room, he just wants some caffeine. Leia bursts in, I need the room. I need to put out the holo map. And how true is that with 2020? You're just moving from room to room, trying to do your work and not wake up the baby or disturb anyone else.
By the way, put a shirt on, you know.
Wonderful. All right, you guys have been amazing. We're going to include this. You know, we're recording, so it's just going to be like this for 5 minutes. There's no questions. There's no answers. It's just a lot of dance moves. Thank you so much for joining us today, Daniel. We appreciate it.
My absolute pleasure.
This one's from Last Shot brings a lot of underrepresented Star Wars aliens into focus like Powans. What was it like bringing these races into the spotlight?
It was so much fun. I feel like it's every nerd's dream to find all these different weird species that, you know, have like a walk-on and walk-off appearance in certain movies and be like, ooh, let me go deeper into that. You know, like there's so much rich history and mythology to explore, and this was an opportunity to just build on that. So I just looked at it as that, like, here's a chance to go deeper and build on all the amazing stuff that's already there. That's, to me, the best thing about Star Wars is like that cantina scene, right? And that every creature in that cantina scene has a whole history. And so getting to like take part in that, dream come true.
This one's from Alden Diaz. My question is regarding Han and toddler Ben. How did Daniel José Older's experiences watching The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi inform his approach to writing Han as the dad to this tiny kiddo?
The tricky thing with that, I think, was to not overly foreshadow and be really corny. You know what I mean? Like, it would be so easy to just be like, dun, 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 whatever that is, the literary equivalent of dun, dun, dun. And I mean, to some extent I did. And I did like fall into that temptation a little bit, but mostly I just wanted to lean into the very like real aspects of having a toddler around. The more like real and visceral those moments felt, the more they would hit home, more so than trying to get all extra and mystical with it. Because at the end of the day, you know, Ben Solo is just a regular human being. And the more we can make these characters that are huge and archetypal also feel very human, that's our job as a writer. Same with Han. You know?
We got a twofer from the Bobby Lynn. Last Shot was a lot of fun. Daniel José Older, you nailed Han and Lando's voices perfectly. Was it hard/intimidating to write such iconic scoundrels?
Yes. The reason I think that it worked out pretty smoothly for me in terms of process is because I've had those voices in my head since I was literally 3. And I mean, if it wasn't on the movie itself, it was with action figures, you know, it was making up stories, playing with my sister, with the neighbors, I've literally been thinking about those characters my whole life.
And very important second part of Bobby Lynn's question, when are we getting more Peekpa content?
When are we getting more Peekpa content?
This is what we all really want to know.
I do too. Well, Peekpa has shown up at Galaxy's Edge, which is so cool. That is like really one of the greatest joys of being a Star Wars creator. That your characters pop up in other places, especially the coolest place in the world, Disney World. So that's really, really exciting. Beyond that, I don't know. I would say that as far as I'm concerned, it's not the end of Peekpa.
This one's from the Brooding Wookiee. The thread of a droid technology takeover seems to be a major theme of sci-fi stories. How does this book add something new to the genre?
You know, I think this is that. This is also a rollicking adventure. This is also, like I said, a family story. This is also a love story very much. You know, there's a lot of layers to this. So the droid takeover is a part of it. I don't think that's the entirety of the story, right? So to me, it's so much of Star Wars. It's about taking these different genres, these different themes, these different complexities of the world that we know and feelings, and throwing them all together into one singular adventure story, you know, one journey.
From Conja Chris, if you could write another story about any of the characters from this novel, who would you pick and why?
Ooh, I've thought about this so much and I still don't have a good answer.
I'm sure the answer changes day to day too.
It changes day by day. I'm a big fan of like team stories. So like I would love to see like further adventures of the crew. Like we built this really cool crew, right? We have Taka, who I love. Taka's probably my favorite character in the whole thing. You know, we have Peekpa. There's just so many people like all running around together and droids and everything, you know, just in this group that we built. And I just like, when the book was over, I wasn't ready to let them go.
Love it, I can tell. All right, awesome. Well, you have been a wonderful guest today, Daniel. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
And thanks to all of you who read along and sent in your questions. Come back next time when the Star Wars Show Book Club gets cozied up for a nice fairy tale or two with Star Wars Myths and Fables by George Mann. Tweet us your questions for the author using hashtag SWSBCMyths, and we'll ask some on the show. Until then, may the Force be with you.